I never thought anything was wrong with my apartment. It wasn't new, but it was clean, quiet, and on the second floor of an old apartment building. I lived alone, worked the afternoon shift, came home around 11 p.m., ate a quick meal, and slept. It all started in March 2019 when I noticed someone, or something, was coming into my house every night. First, it was small things. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and saw that the dining chair was out of place. I clearly remembered pushing it closer to the table the night before. I had no pets, no guests, no drunkenness, no moving things around. I put the chair back. The next morning, the chair was out of place again. This time it was even farther away, half a meter from the table, turned about 20 degrees, as if someone had sat down and then stood up in a hurry. I started to feel weird. Then there was the kitchen. One night after I washed the dishes and left the glass upside down on the shelf, the next morning there was another glass one I was sure was in the cupboard on the table, dry as if it hadn't been washed in a long time. I told myself maybe I was just tired and had a bad memory. But then the TV turned on in the middle of the night. No sound, just a blue screen. No alarm, no stuck remote. I took out the batteries. The next night the TV was still on. It was only then that I truly believed someone was breaking into my house. I changed the locks, called a repairman to install an inside deadbolt lock, an outside deadbolt lock, and a door bar. I also installed a cheap door sensor, the kind that beeps when someone opens the door. The first night after installing the sensor, I couldn't sleep. The apartment was so quiet I could hear the faint vibration of the plumbing underneath. Around 2 a.m. I heard a beep. Just one. Short. Sharp. The door sensor only makes a sound when the door is open, not when there is force. I jumped up. The door was still closed. The latch was still engaged. The latch was still in place. But the sensor, the one attached to the door, was a few millimeters off, as if someone had touched it and pushed it slightly to the side. I knew for sure that someone was trying to open my door. I stood there staring at the door for nearly 20 minutes, holding a baseball bat. No one came in. No one knocked. No one ran. It just felt like someone was standing right next to the door, completely silent. I got some sleep. The next morning, when I walked out into the living room, I noticed something that made me lean against the wall in panic. The rug in front of the sofa, the light gray one, was pulled off by almost a meter, as if someone were standing there, turned to face the bedroom. I didn't pull the rug. I didn't touch it. No one had a key to my house. I started installing mini cameras in the house, 3 of them, one in the kitchen, one in the living room, one facing the bedroom. I reviewed the first night cameras, the moment that sent chills down my spine. At about 2:17 a.m., the living room camera jerked slightly. Then the image shook for 2 seconds, then stabilized. During those 2 seconds of shaking, I saw a shadowy figure standing against the left corner of the wall, shorter than a normal adult, motionless. I froze the image, zoomed in. It was hard to see clearly, but it seemed to me that the figure had no shoulders. It wasn't hunched over. It wasn't bowed. It didn't follow the shape of a human body. When the camera stabilized, the shadow was gone. No sound of the door opening. No sound. No movement. A cold sweat ran down my back. The next night, I stayed up waiting. I turned off all the lights, leaving only the kitchen light to cast a dim glow. Around 1:53 a.m., I heard a faint rustling sound from the hallway outside the door, like fabric brushing against each other. Then a very faint sniffing sound. Not a sick person, not a sharp inhale either, like someone trying to sniff through the crack in the door. I picked up my phone, about to turn back, but then, click. My light switch turned on. I stood frozen. No one was near the switch. No exposed wires. No footsteps. I walked closer to the door, peering into the peephole. The hallway was dark, empty. but I heard something beyond all reasonable explanation. The sound of bare feet running very fast, straight toward the stairs. Small, many, uneven, like 4 feet running together. Not an adult, not a child, something else. I called the police. They arrived within 12 minutes, checked the door, the lock, the hinges, no sign of forced entry. They went through the apartment, no one was hiding. But as they were about to leave, a young officer frowned and looked behind the sofa. "Did you turn on the fan?" "No." Because behind the sofa there was a spot on the wall that was steamy, like someone had stood against it for minutes. A long, faint streak, about a meter high, not as high as an adult. The police looked at me, then wrote a report very quickly, as if they wanted to leave as soon as possible. After that night, I moved to sleep in the bedroom, locked both doors, and put my suitcase in front of the door as a barrier. It didn't help. About a week later, I woke up in the middle of the night to a very small sound coming from the closet. Not the sound of something falling, not the sound of wind. It was a slight creaking sound, like someone was trying to twist my neck a little bit. I looked over at the closet. The door was still closed, but there was a dark space between the 2 closet doors, and in that darkness, I saw a white eye looking out. No black heart, no movement. I turned on the room light. The closet door shook slightly, then opened a small crack. There was no one inside, but each hanger was shifted to the right, as if someone were sitting between them. I closed the closet, shaking like crazy. I didn't sleep that night. I decided to move, but before I left, I told the story to an elderly neighbor who lived on the 1st floor. She looked at me without surprise, without a sneer. She just said, "Room 2SB had a death." I asked who. She said, "In 2003, this apartment complex was temporarily locked down because an 1-year-old girl went missing in the building. The police searched everywhere. No trace, no clue. No one broke in. Until one morning, a small dusty footprint was found on the 1st floor storage room floor, leading straight into an old storage room. In that room was the girl's coat, nothing else. But what made the case unexplained was this. The storage room door had been locked from the outside for 48 hours. No one went in. No one went out. The case was left unsolved. 2 years later, the family moved away, never to return. When she got to this point, her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "Your apartment used to be the apartment that the little girl used to run up to play in." I stood there, dumbfounded. Everything I experienced, the chair being pulled, the TV turning on by itself, the low shadow standing in the corner, the low steam on the wall, the sound of running on all fours, the white eye in the closet, all matched the description in the girl's missing persons file. No one had broken into my house. There were no living people, but something hadn't left the building since 2003, and it was still looking for a place to hide. I left that apartment only 3 days later, but even now, sometimes when I open the closet in my new place, I still see the tiny shadow standing still for 0.5 seconds before disappearing. It was as if it had been with me since the first day I heard the chair being pulled. Not the sound of a living person, but not entirely the sound of a dead person either. I moved into a small house in the suburbs of Tacoma in June 2020. It was an old but neat bungalow, just big enough for a single person to live there. I liked it because it was quiet, the neighbors weren't loud, and there were only a few cars passing by at night. I work remotely, so I'm home most of the time, and maybe that's why I noticed the sound sooner than the average person. It all started the Saturday after I moved in. At around 2 a.m., I woke up to a creaking sound in the ceiling right above my bedroom. At first, I thought it was a cat, The neighbors had stray cats, and they used to climb up on the roof, but the sound didn't sound like an animal. It was slow and rhythmic. Creak. Pause. Creak. Like a person walking very slowly. I lay still and listened. The ceiling sank a little very slightly, and then went back to normal. I called the landlord the next morning. He said maybe a mouse or something had gotten into the gutter. I wanted to believe it, but the footsteps came back the next night, and the night after that, always at the same time. Between 1:50 and 2:10 a.m., something above me, walking, not running, not rummaging, just walking. A week later, the attic inspector came. He was a middle-aged man, careful and meticulous. He climbed into the attic on a small stepladder, shining a flashlight everywhere. No mice, no droppings, no footprints, no cat nests, no disturbed dust, nothing. But when he came down, he asked me a question that sent a chill down my spine. "Where did you say it went?" "Right above the bedroom." He was silent for a few seconds, then said, "Your bedroom has no ceiling space. It's attached directly to the roof. No one can walk on it." He looked at me as if trying to decide whether to continue. "That ceiling can't support the weight of a human." I didn't know how to answer. The footsteps last night couldn't have been human. They couldn't have been cats either. Nothing could have passed through that area without breaking the ceiling. But the sound kept coming, step by step, every night. I bought a cheap recording device and put it in the bedroom. When I listened to it the next morning, my heart almost sank. From 1:54 to 1:59 a.m., the exact time it usually happened, the sound began. Creak. A very soft breath, and then another creak. Not an animal sound. There was a rhythm, there was a weight, and especially, sometimes the sound didn't come from one spot. It moved from the left corner to the right corner. Then it stood still in the middle of my bedroom for about 5 seconds, as if someone were stopping to listen to me breathe. Once it sounded like someone was kneeling down. A very small thump, soft but clear. I almost didn't dare go into the bedroom that night. I slept in the living room, but that night, at 2 a.m., I heard a very slow tapping from inside the wall behind the sofa. 3 taps. So clear that I jumped up. I pressed my ear to the wall, and my heart froze. There was a thin, long breathing sound, like someone was trying to take a deep breath from inside the wood. Not a plumbing sound. It wasn't the sound of heat contracting. It sounded human. I jumped up, grabbed the phone, and called the police. When the police arrived, they searched the entire house. No one. No signs of forced entry. The windows were locked from the inside. The back door was double locked. One of the officers, the older one, put his hand on the living room wall and asked me, "Is the knocking coming from here?" I nodded. He pressed his finger lightly against the paint. A small patch of paint was peeling off, and underneath the white paint was a long gray streak, like someone had worn the wood from the inside. I asked what it was. The officer didn't answer. He just advised me to leave the house for a few days if I heard the noise again. I started hanging a screen in the living room to sleep. I never went back to the bedroom again. But what really broke me was the 17th night. I woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of something falling on the kitchen floor. I turned on the living room light. The light shone into the kitchen, and on the floor was a crumpled white-blue plastic grocery bag. I hadn't bought anything that night. I hadn't taken the bag out of the closet. I picked it up and realized that inside was something that made me shake uncontrollably. An old Polaroid photo of this house, taken from the living room right where I was standing. In the photo, there was a girl standing right under the ceiling. Her face was not clearly visible. Only her long hair covered half her face. Above her head, close to the ceiling, were 2 faint dark streaks, like the imprints of someone's hand pressing against it from above. And what made me fall apart was the back of the photo. "Can you hear me?" Written in black pen, scribbled, the handwriting shaky as if written in the dark. I called the police again. This time, they came with the old records manager from the area. A young officer looked at the photo, paled, and then spoke quietly with a colleague. Finally, they told me the truth. In 1998, there had been a strange disappearance in this house. A young woman who lived alone, Marissa Hale, told the police that someone was walking on the ceiling every night. She said she heard knocking in the walls. She said things were being moved. She said someone was standing right on top of her while she slept. The report was crossed out in several places, but there was one I never forgot. Victim reported hearing footsteps coming from an area with no ceiling space. The attic door had been sealed since 1995. No break-in was detected. No fingernail or footprints were found. Victim disappeared a week later, leaving a Polaroid of herself in the house from the ceiling. The police never found her. The case was dropped. What I heard: impossible footsteps, breathing in the wall, wear marks under the paint, the photo dropped in the kitchen. It all matched the 1,998 records. No break-in. No one could have walked through the ceiling. The attic was sealed. No exit. So where did the footsteps come from? I left the house within 24 hours. I sold everything, moved to a new apartment. I installed cameras, sensors, burglar locks, all of it. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, just as I was falling asleep, I would hear a slight creaking above me. Slowly, just like that, footsteps. Creak, stop, creak, like something was following me. Not an intruder, not a living person, but not quite dead either. I moved into the house at the end of 2017, after a long relationship ended. I chose it because it was cheap, quiet, and about a 15-minute drive from the city center. A 2-bedroom wooden house with a backyard, an old fence, and a small unused attic. I lived alone, and I always locked the door. That's the first thing I want to confirm, because what happened next can only be called intrusion, but not in the way a normal intruder would. It all started with a very soft sound. I was in the living room watching TV around midnight when I heard something like fingers tapping on wood, coming from inside the empty bedroom closet. I didn't use that room, just a few boxes of old things and winter coats. The sound stopped when I stood up. I walked into the empty bedroom, turned on the light, opened the closet. Nothing. No mouse tracks, no dust, no furniture moved, just the smell of old wood, not unpleasant, but strange. I closed the closet and thought the wood might have expanded due to the temperature change. But the next morning, when I opened the closet to get my coat, I saw that on the clothes rail, a hanger was facing the wrong way. I never hung it like that. I adjusted it. Little did I know that was the first sign. 2 days later, around 1 a.m., I was washing my hands in the bathroom when I heard a soft breathing sound just behind the medicine cabinet door. It wasn't a plumbing sound. It wasn't wind. It was real breathing, compressed, weak, like someone was hiding. I opened the medicine cabinet. No one. But my soap bottle was facing the wrong way, its cap facing inward, not outward like before. I started to get scared. That night I placed a glass just behind my bedroom door, so that if anyone walked in it would fall and wake me. Around 3 a.m. I heard a rattling sound, very light, like someone picking up the glass with 2 fingers to keep it from falling. I turned on the light. The door was still closed, locked. The glass was still upright, but it was no longer where I had left it. It was shifted almost 30 centimeters to the side. I began to believe that someone or something was entering the house in a way that didn't come through the front door. A week later, things became clearer. I came home from work at 10 p.m. It was raining. The street was dark. When I walked into the house, I saw that the spare bedroom light was on. I had never turned it on. I turned it off, went to the kitchen to get a drink of water. 2 minutes later, the light came back on. I stood in the hallway, looking straight into the bedroom. The closet door was slightly ajar, about an inch. I remembered I'd closed it. I held my breath, moving closer. The air in the room was colder than the rest of the house, as if someone had been standing there for a long time. I opened the closet. No one was inside, but there were 2 long, narrow streaks of dust on the wood floor that had been swept clean, as if someone had pulled their head deep inside to hide. I closed the closet, but as I turned to leave, I saw something that stopped me. One edge of the jacket in the closet, a gray one hanging close to the wall, was trembling slightly, as if someone had touched it. I left the spare bedroom and locked it from the outside, but that didn't help. On the 11th night, I heard very light footsteps on the floor, going from the kitchen to the spare bedroom, then back to the living room. Not adult footsteps, not a pet. The footsteps, half steps, as if the feet weren't fully lifted off the floor. I turned off the TV and stood still. The footsteps stopped just behind the sofa I was sitting on, no more than a meter. I turned on the lights abruptly. No one, but the sofa had a small depression, as if someone had been leaning against the back of the sofa for several minutes. I called the police. When they arrived, there was no sign of forced entry, no broken doors, no muddy footprints, no fingerprints. An officer said, "Maybe the house is old and echoes, don't worry," but he couldn't explain why there was a long, faint but distinct mark on the edge of the bedroom closet, like a fingernail scratch. I wanted to move out immediately, but I had a month left on my lease. And then came the night I'll never forget. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of someone taking a deep breath. Right in my bedroom, a sound so close it was almost right next to my ear. I turned on the light. The room was empty, but the door to my closet, the one in my room, not the spare room, was open a crack, though I was sure it was closed. I went over and opened the closet. No one was inside, but there was one detail that sent a chill down my spine. On the inside edge of the closet, against the wall, there was the imprint of a human head, exactly the width of temple to chin, faintly etched in the dust. Someone had been standing right inside my closet, head against the wall, standing still, looking out. I packed my things that night and went to a friend's house to sleep. The next morning, I called the landlord and said I was moving out early. He was silent for a moment, then said, "I see." His voice wasn't surprised. A week later, when I was packing for the last time, I met the woman who had lived next door for years. She asked me, "Do you sleep in the spare room?" I said no. She sighed and lowered her voice to a near whisper. "Your previous tenant slept there." She disappeared. He stood still. She told the landlord several times that someone was in the closet. She said that one night she woke up and saw the hanger turning left and right, the closet door opening and closing. She said someone touched her hair while she was sleeping. She paused for a moment and then said, "The police searched everywhere for clues. No door was forced open, no trace. No one had entered her house, but inside the closet, there was the imprint of a head, just like you said." I asked when it happened. She replied, 2012. No one found her. The police just wrote, "No intruder found, no footprints, no evidence she left the house on her own." What I experienced: the coat hanger turned, the breathing in the medicine cabinet, the glass picked up without making a sound, the dust swept into a narrow groove, the dragging footsteps, the dent in the sofa, the head-shaped imprint in the closet, all matched the 2012 records. No one had broken into my house. No one had broken in through the door. No one could have entered the closet and disappeared without a trace. But something was still standing in the darkness, hidden in the closet where the previous tenant had last been seen alive. I left that house forever, but sometimes, when I open the cupboard in a new place, I still feel a cold air coming from the darkness, like someone is standing close to the edge of the cupboard to avoid the light. Not a living person, but not completely dead either.